friends, welcome to Christian Content Videos. My name is Prasanna Jangam. I'm a Christian Apologist. Today, I'm going to be answering a question regarding women in Christianity, and the question is, should Christian women wear head covering all the times in the church, at home, at their workplaces, or generally outside? So the answer is, there is no rule that Christian women should wear head covering every time and everywhere they are seen. But when we come to this conclusion, this is a thing after a lot of understanding goes into the explanation, and then we come to conclusion that Christian women are not required to wear head covering everywhere and even in the church. So when this thing comes to the surface, obviously the first Bible verses that we come across, the Bible verses that stand in our way to come to this conclusion the verses are from 1 Corinthians chapter 11 verses 2 to 10. And these 9 verses speak a lot about Christian women are not being allowed or are not supposed to. These verses basically tell us literally that Christian women are not supposed to be without head covering, or they are required to wear head covering every time in the church. So the Bible doesn't say, and also it is not clear whether the women are required to wear head covering in the church or only in the church, or even it is applicable outside the church, even at home, at the workplaces, at schools, at colleges, and so on. Unlike the makeup topic, there is definitely a literal verse which says that if a woman does not cover her head in the church, obviously she should have her head shorn. It dishonors her head. And if a woman does not cover her head in the church while she prophesies, while she speaks, prays, obviously she is dishonoring her head, and it is the same as not covering her head, or it is the same as her head being shaved or shorn. So obviously this is, before I go ahead and come to the conclusion, explain and then come to the conclusion that women are not required to put on head coverings all the times, or it is up to the women that if they want to put on head covering, they can. If they do not want to put on head covering, they are not required to. So obviously there is a literal verse, so there is a definite explanation of a big size, obviously, that is required here to come to the conclusion that Christian women are not supposed to, not required to put on head covering. So before I go ahead and dive into explanation part, I want to go ahead and give you guys a little background about these verses, because this is a complex verse, and this is one of the complex verses of the Bible which needs a lot of explanation, like Christian women wearing makeup. Are they allowed to wear makeup or not? It needs a lot of explanation, like verses like, where did Jesus say God or worship me in the entire Bible? So there is none. So it leads literally there is no explanation. So Trinity, another complex verse, it leads a lot of explanation too. So what we're saying is, some people question that what Christians are saying is, Father is a person, the Son is a person, the Holy Spirit is a person. They are all individual and separately individual beings, persons at the same time, but at the same time they are not 3 separate persons but one person. So that is a concept and a doctrine, a teaching that needs a lot of explanation. And should all the churches be named Church of Christ? That's a complex question that leads a lot of, though it appears that what we know is true, but at the same time it needs a lot of explanation to come to the conclusion that not all the churches are required to be named Church of Christ. Similarly, the question about, can Christian women preach in the churches? That's another complex doctrine to tackle, and there's a lot of explanation that needs to go into that. Likewise, this is one of those. There are many other complex verses in the Bible, complex verses and questions that needs to be answered with a lot of heavy understanding and explanation. So this is one of those verses. So 2 things this thing has done, and because there's a literal verse in the Bible, literal passage and context that says that if a woman does not put on head covering and attends the church or preaches or prophesies or speaks, obviously she is the same as having her head shorn. She is dishonoring her head. So if it wasn't for the words shameful used in the Bible from the verses 2 to 10, so what the Bible says is if a woman does not put on her head covering, obviously, and she's the same as her head being shorn, and if she feels that her head being shorn is shameful to her, then obviously she should put on her head covering. If it wasn't for the word shameful there, obviously we needed much more explanation than I'm going to give in this video to prove that women are not required to put on head covering. The reason why it is shameful is the question. Why is it shameful for a woman to have her head shorn? That's one thing. The second thing is if a woman having her head shorn is shameful, obviously the Bible should be saying that she should have her hair grown. So that doesn't make sense. If having her head shorn is a shameful thing, the Bible should command that her head should be covered with hair, or her head should have hair. And obviously Bible is not teaching hairstyle or a grooming style for women. Obviously to some cultures it is not a shameful thing to have short hair for women. And in some cultures like India, if you are going to a religious place, to an auspicious place, to a holy place, to a sacred place, it is a vow. Even in the Bible, Paul had one of his men to have his head shaven off, hair cut off for a vow. So having hair cut off or having short hair or having head shorn is not a shameful thing. In a sense, it is a shameful thing for lack of a good moral behavior. So obviously there needs to be something else that it is pointing to, that it is associated with, that so that whenever some woman is having her head shorn, it is a cheap thing, it is a shameful thing for a woman to not have hair on her head. But if having a bald head is a shameful thing for a woman, the Bible should have said, please have your hair grown. And if someone, let's say 1 in 10,000 or 1 in a million, maybe one woman does not have her head covered with hair. I'm not speaking about African Americans or African women, but generally speaking, no hair at all on their heads. So that's not a possible scenario everywhere, and it is the odds are very less, maybe 1 in a million, 1 in a 10,000 kind of a thing. So if a woman does not have her hair on head, then it makes sense for the Bible to say, have your head covered with a head covering so that people may not mock you. But here it says, the tone of the verse here says, if you do not cover your head, it's the same as not having hair on your head or having your head shorn. And at the same time, and that head shorn is shameful, and to some cultures it is not. For example, people go to holy places like Tirupati and offer their hair, and if some especially in India, if someone goes to a woman or any person who has offered their hair as a vow to the temple, and obviously if someone mouths it, they're gonna get beaten up, they get thrashed by people. It's possible. So one part of it makes sense, but the second part doesn't make sense. If some woman does not have hair, the Bible is not even advising a certain hairstyle, that a woman should not have a bald head for a hairstyle. To some cultures it is being posh, being lavish, being rich, or being urban, being modernized. So there's no fault with that. So the second part is, if you do not have your the first part is the Bible should have said, if you do not have your hair on your head, obviously make sure you cover your head, so that if it is not a good thing, if it is not culturally acceptable style, make sure you cover your head, because that's how you've been born. So things happen, but make sure you also protect yourself from mocking, possible mockery, and so on. So, but the second thing is, if you do not have your head, it is not speaking about one woman, it is speaking about all the Christian women. So if a woman does not have hair, the Bible should advise them to make sure you grow your hair. It looks good for women and so on. But it says cover your head with a head covering, not with the hair, or not. It's not saying grow your hair. And having short hair or bald head is not a shameful thing. So what the Bible say? So it should mean something else. It should mean that the culture was in a situation that if a woman has her head shorn, it's a shameful thing. It is a morally declining thing, a morally deteriorating thing, a morally shameful thing. And if we go through the history annals, obviously we find out that these passages are culturally bound verses. These 9 verses are culturally bound, time bound. There are different kind of verses in the Bible. If we can deduct verses into different types. Few are time bound, few are culture bound, few are space bound, place bound. So this is a place bound only to the Corinth church. This is culture bound, this is time bound. It was only meant to those women of the Corinthian church, because Corinth was a trade place. So it was a port place. So obviously ships were flowing in with a lot of cargo of the day. So obviously it was rampant in that culture that prostitution was free for people involved in this trade, especially for the captains who bring in cargo. Just like for the pilots, we have, for example, if they fly from one place to one place, they get all the amenities, all the luxurious accommodations reserved for them at the destination. So they fly, they do their job as a pilot, and then when they reach their destination, the B point, the second point, so obviously they relax, they have the accommodations reserved there, obviously, and after that they have their stay, they enjoy their stay, and they get back. So that's how it happens. So it was the same thing back in the day at the Corinth church in that place, in that city. So obviously when the captains were sailing in with their cargo, their goods, obviously they had a shrine or they had a temple where prostitution was allowed, prostitution was free, and prostitution was one of the things that they had as a relaxation. So they were entertained with prostitutes, they were entertained with prostitution. So it was free. There was a temple. There are some people say, some websites say that there were hundreds of prostitutes available for captains or people who were merchants, people who were traders who come in with cargo and stuff. So obviously they had this opportunity to mingle with or to spend with the prostitutes. So obviously, and the thing there was, all the prostitutes were identified with their short hair or bald hair, at least with their bald hair, or if the sign that told people that this woman was a prostitute was looking at her shaven hair, shorn hair. So the Bible was it was a possibility because there was a lot of money coming in. So obviously people and it was possible that the politicians of the day, the government, were treating them like the VIPs, and there was literally nobody kind of stopping them or hindering them from enjoying their luxuries and facilities and so on. So in this situation, the church it was the early church time, and it was a new church, a blooming church. It was growing. So obviously a church had a concern. If a woman was walking in the street, and even for the Christian women, there was a possibility. Not every Christian woman, not every woman is blessed with thick hair, strong hair. So obviously some women had loose hair, and to cover that up, to cover the corners of their hair, some people choose to cut their corners so that the ends look thicker and not look thinner. So this was possible, and some people, obviously it is possible that do not have much hair like any other woman. So church came up with a rule that, for example, it was also possible, if even if the woman had long hair, it was possible that the people may take chance and mock them and treat them as prostitutes and identify them as prostitutes, like the temple prostitutes. So though they had long hair, or though they had short hair, or what they thought was short hair to them, so that they may say, oh, we thought this woman was also a prostitute, so that's why we behaved with her that way. So this was a possibility, and to stop this, instead of so not all women have the same kind of hair, so church came up with an idea with this law for that time, that Christian women should cover their hair, head, so that with the long hair or short hair, they will realize that this is a complete opposite way of hair dressing for the women. So obviously they would even if they want to go and try trying with a Christian woman, walking around in the streets, they would obviously, the head covering would obviously obstruct them from identifying those women as prostitutes. So that was a sign of authority, or that was a sign of telling people that these people are not prostitutes, or these women are not prostitutes like the head-shorn women. So these people, and also it was also happening in a temple area, so they should not confuse this religion with that religion. Even if the women were not covering their hair in the church, so if there's a possibility some captain or some merchant trader can walk into the church and think, though this girl has a short hair, so I think this girl is also one of them, and think that Christianity is a similar religion, or so that was a possibility. So that is the reason why this law was given. At the same time, there was also a theological doctrine that also matched that law at the time. It doesn't mean the Bible is wrong. The Bible answered that situation, and also there was a theological concept that was matching that scenario, and that is the reason why head covering was given. And these signs during the Corinth church, the sign was having the hair short, or mainly having their heads shorn, was a sign to recognize a prostitute. For whatever reason, they become prostitutes for unfortunate reasons. And today, the Corinth culture is gone. Today, we are living in a different cultures. In different cultures, and we have different ways of recognizing prostitutes by profession for various unfortunate reasons or different reasons. But today, for example, it is identified as women, staying late nights in the bus stands or open bus stop areas in the railway stations here and there. There are different ways to identify them today. It is not as the same as the Corinth times. So today, even still, the church advise Christian young women and Christian women to not hang around in the bus stops, or not to stay late out, so that people may recognize them as one of them and mistreat them as well. So the timeless truth in that principle is we should not look like them, so that we do not get treated by them like one of those, and at the same time they may mistake the theology that we have like any others, or people who believe some other things. So they were adamant and they were strict about these things, and that is the reason why that law was given that day. And unwritten law today is we need to make every attempt to not look like people for unfortunate reasons ending up in prostitution. And today we need to look like as chaste women as possible, so that people look at us and obviously they learn a theological statement or a theology or a good news from us. So it was a culture bound area, and it was meant for those people and only for that time. So today we do not have that situation. Today we have different ways of recognizing prostitutes. So today it's a different thing. So that law is over. So the principle of it remains, and and the doctrine that head of woman is man and head of man is Christ, that thing remains. And today we have a different way of recognizing a woman having a husband as authority over her life, or the man of the house. So back in the day, though, like today, they might have had engagement rings or a few other things. Today we have Mangal Sutras in our country. So back in the day, whatever it was, because the culture was so infested with that prostitution culture, and because it was associated with tons of money. So obviously this did not stop them. For example, even back in the day, for example, let's say they had Mangal Sutras too. So even they recognized it. It was possible for some reason. We thought that is not the sign that we recognize women as married and not a prostitute, not becoming a prostitute. It was also possible that there were some women who got married and later got into prostitution with their Mangal Sutras and engagement rings and so on. So it was a peculiar and a separate and distinct special sign of authority that separated women from the prostitutes who were being identified as prostitutes. That was the main motto behind that. So those times are past, and today it's a different thing. Today Mangal Sutras are enough that we know that this woman is a married woman and so on. She is not single and so on. And as far as men are concerned, if men have long hair and if men cover their head, they dishonor their heads too. So one thing is for certain, that half of it is fixed, it is determined, it is explained, it is completely sealed, the deal is sealed, that women were given a specific law for a specific time, as long as the culture had a bald head being the sign for recognizing a prostitute, and that culture is gone and that law is not in place. And today even the men, if they grow their hairs long, and they were given that law because the Jews had a law called the Nazirite law. If for some reason they grow their hairs long, it was a possibility that they may think that this is another form of Judaism. And keeping the above conclusion in perspective, obviously we can conclude that it was also possible for women, men who were involved in prostitution had long hairs or had a hippie-like culture, because it was a culture. Just like we heard of hippies, hipsters in the United States, it was a vibe, it was a community of people that had long hairs, guitars, bikes, roaming around, making some money here and there, working here and there, and they had their vibe, they had their enjoyment, they had their times and so on. So the first thing, women do not, we conclude that the first part is explained, the first deal is sealed, that they do not have to put on head coverings all the times, be it in the church, be it at school, be it at home, wherever. It is up to them. If they want to, they can. There are no restrictions on women's clothing as long as they are modest. So nothing wrong with head covering. And another thing is men putting on head covering was also counted as a dishonor, because it was a Jewish culture. Jews were also converting, and if some people, and it was the Jewish culture to cover their heads with yarmulkes, like a Muslim cap, but not that large as Muslim cap. It's like this, covers completely this portion of their head. So yet it can be considered as a head covering for men. So two things, the church in saying these two things, the church was trying to protect. One is trying to protect their theology, that these people were not identified as a culture that was basically doing prostitution, and bad people and reckless people, irresponsible people, immoral people, hippies and so on. And second thing is protecting their theology, so that people do not think that their theology is the same as Jewish theology. This is another religion, a mix-up religion. So they were making sure that theology is protected and their reputation is protected. That's why these laws were given. So this answers the question: should Christian women put on head covering? So the answer is no, they do not have to. But if they want to, they can. They're not required by the Christian Bible to put on head coverings in the church, at their workplaces, or at their homes, in their schools, and so on. So this is the answer to this question. I really hope you have learned something new today. Thank you for watching this video. If you are new here and if you want to subscribe to Christian content videos yet, make sure you do that. Please click on the bell icon to get notified whenever I post a new thing. Please share and like my videos so that people in your circles can also get blessed with a heavy understanding of the word. Thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate your time here. May God bless us all.